Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today we'll be talking about the growing opportunity that outdoor apparel brands have when it comes to plus sizes with the founder of Make Plus Equal, Andrea Kelly. But first, it's been a busy week here on the old Rock Fight. On Monday, we talked about outdoor brands' poor performance on TikTok, and we also talked with Owen Comerford about the rumored MEC sale. On Wednesday, Justin Hausman and I were joined by Doug Schnitzbahn to talk about his new podcast here on the Rock Fight Podcast Network. That show is called Open Container. You should follow it wherever you get your podcasts. We also had our first ever story of the year and answered listener mailbag questions. And lastly, if you're new around here, we would love it if you subscribed and joined the Rock Fight by hitting the follow button on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. And also, you know what? Give us that 5-star rating. All right, let's start the show. You're listening to Rock Fight Radio.
A ball sock for all times. It's no ordinary sock. It does what it says it does. Fit. Our socks merino, but they don't fall down. This sock fits better than your sock. A funky shaped sock that's an elegant solution to budging in the toes, heel slippage and falling down at the ankle. A sock with patented knit structures that achieve whole foot comfort that you can really feel like whoa. A sock that acts like a base layer. A sock that's all about the base layer. A thermoregulating, moisture-wicking, body-forming base layer. Fits is a sock that fits better than your sock, maybe even the best sock ever. It really could be Fits, a bull sock for all times. It's no ordinary sock. It does what it says it does. Fit, 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 fit. It really could be Fits layer. It really could be Fits.
Welcome back to Rock Fight Radio. I'm DJ CT, and that was Bold Sock, the newest track from Fits. Fits has been knitting the hit since 2014 with their patented whole foot comfort approach to making fine gauge merino performance socks. With their custom fit feel that's like nothing else, they make some of the best basics in the biz. Retailers, with all new branding and new packaging on the way, the time is now to get in on a refreshed sock wall for spring and fall. All right, let's get back to the show. Is there anything worse than when someone answers the question, why is something the way it is, with, because that's the way we've always done it? Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm just going to say it right now. There is nothing worse than answering the question, why is something the way it is, because that's the way we've always done it, especially when it comes to the outdoor industry. An industry, I'll remind you, probably for the 1,000th time in the history of this podcast, that only exists in its current form because of innovation and solving problems. And I know there's a big percentage of you listening to this right now who work in the outdoor industry, at apparel brands in the outdoor industry. And if I said to you, person who works at an outdoor apparel brand, does your apparel brand support inclusivity and diversity and equity for those who've been marginalized? Your answer would probably be something like, oh yeah, of course, we have DEI efforts that we're proud of, and our CFO is a woman, and we have this initiative and that initiative, and so on. And if I followed up that first question with another question that was, does your outdoor apparel brand offer plus sizes? Your answer would probably be, well, no. And if I followed up those first two questions with one more question that was, are you aware of how many consumers and how much money your outdoor apparel brand is leaving on the table? The absolutely mind-blowing amount of money that exists for a group of people who have been marginalized, have very little access to gear and apparel, but also have outdoorsy aspirations? Does your brand have any idea the number that is just sitting there waiting for someone to claim it? Your answer would still probably be no. And that's why my guest today is Andrea Kelly, the founder of Make Plus Equal. Andrea is a leading size inclusion expert in outdoor apparel with 25 years of experience building products for some of the largest global brands in the outdoor space like Columbia. With her company, Make Plus Equal, she combines her business expertise and passion for inclusion with her lived experiences of being an outdoor enthusiast in the plus size community. Welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today we're talking size inclusivity with Andrea Kelly. All right, I'm joined now by size inclusion expert Andrea Kelly, who has worked in and around the outdoor industry for over 25 years. She's the founder of Make Plus Equal, a company that is recalibrating the outdated norm of sizing in the industry so that more people can get outside to do the things they love. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Hey, thanks for having me, Colin.
How's the weather in Portland?
Why would you ask? You know the answer to that question.
Because I'm in Southern California and everyone's afraid we're going to burn to death. So I wanted to hold it
I will
over
say
somebody,
my air quality is probably better than your air quality. It is cold and dreary, but I'm getting on a plane to go to Florida tomorrow. So, I got no complaints.
January is an excellent time to be in Florida.
I think so, too.
Other times where it's not excellent to be in Florida, but January, not bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so there have been, I think various attempts to expand size offerings of apparel lines over the years, right? And it's undeniable that regardless of race, sex, country of origin, whatever, there are plenty of people who won't fit into the, typical size ranges that we all experience in our day-to-day lives of, extra small to, let's say, double XL. So what I wanted to start with is kind of how we got here. Like, how are we in this sort of extra small to double XL as only what our options are typically for most people's shopping excursions in an apparel store, right? So what's actually the history of plus sizes? Why are we where we are? And what have you uncovered doing the work that you do?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that, the answer of why we are where we are is because we didn't have enough information. And I'll come back around to that when I sort of give you the timeline. Obviously, the older we get, the further along we move in history, the more we learn, and hopefully the more we change. And information has been coming at us very quickly, fortunately, which has allowed us to sort of change the history. Plus sizes really started actually back in the 20s by a brand that everybody has heard of. It's Lane Bryant.
1920s.
19, fair.
Right?
Oh, God.
We have to do that now, right?
We do have to do that now. Sorry,
the
Gen
1920s.
I know. The 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century, founded, the first brand was Lane Bryant. And it was actually a maternity wear company that eventually evolved into Mrs. Plus Size product way, way back. And most of us know that because it's been around forever. It is still one of the brick and mortar stores that you can actually go in that's customized for plus size people, and you can try things on and buy them off the rack. There was a brand that came out around 1980, and I will say that the plus really started with fashion, not outdoor. Mm-hmm. Outdoor came by much later. So Marina Rinaldi was a high-end designer in 1980s that came out. And then in the 1990s, around 2001, Torrid actually started building products for the plus size people. So for the plus size folks who are out there already, those two brands. It's Lane Bryant and it's Torrid. Those are the two shops that we can absolutely walk into, buy what we need, and walk out. That's still the case today. Nothing else is guaranteed. It started shifting into outdoor in the late 90s and then early 2000s with Eddie Bauer and Columbia. They were the first outdoor brands that were actually making plus-size product for men and women, although it was pretty meager, but there were still options, which was great. But what really happened, I think, was, the age of information and 2010 when social media really started ramping up. All of a sudden, this community of marginalized people who'd been left out forever finally started finding their voice. So you started seeing a lot more, I don't even think they had Reels back in 2010, but you started seeing a lot of posts and a lot of hashtags around body positivity and body neutrality and size acceptance and all of these things. So it sort of started gaining some momentum then. And I think what really, really shifted specifically for the outdoor industry, but for the plus size industry in general, was in 2015, there was a study done by Plunkett Research. And the findings that they found were that 67% of women in North America were plus sized. And I don't think, 60. I'm going to say that again, 67% of women in North America were plus sized. And that was in 2015. I looked at an article from the CDC in 2018 that now included men and women and actually states that 72% of people in the United States are either obese or overweight. And we're not going to get into how I feel about those terms because those are medical terms. But yeah, that I think was the big eye opener for everybody, especially, even personally for me of like, oh, wait a minute, we're not the minority. We're not some side, nobody needs to pay attention. We're actually the majority of people. We are the majority of people. The majority of people are plus sized. And I think that's when things really started to change. So in 2015, Universal Standard first started carrying their lines, and they are like the pinnacle of apparel when it comes to plus sizes, high-end quality products, great for the office, a little bit of casual wear, a little bit of active wear. But they were the first ones to say, you know what, this sizing that everybody's been doing is bullshit. And offering only a couple colors and big sizes is bullshit. We're going to offer everything from size 0 to size 40, I think is what they go up to now, which is the equivalent of like a 6X. And in all colors and all for the same price. So it's so funny. Like, I've known about them since they came to be. And at one point I was explaining the process of like, look, they make everything for everybody as if it should be the universal standard. Oh, what a great brand name. Like, it just went bing. That's why they did that. So 2015 was sort of that big change. They were founded. 2016 was huge. Ashley Graham was the first plus size model on the Sports Illustrated cover at a whopping size 16. The average is a size 18 to 20 now. So a little bit of evolution there. And then again, things really started sort of ramping up there. So 2017, REI came out with their Force of Nature campaign, which initially they had thought about running this campaign as, let's be more gender inclusive. It's always a skinny white guy hanging off of a rock. Why? It shouldn't be a skinny white guy hanging off a rock. But the deeper they dug, the more they found that, oh, it's not just gender that's an issue. It's a size issue too. So maybe let's tap into that a little bit. 2018 Prana came out with some plus size stuff. And then 2020 was huge. So again, you find this news around 2015 of the actual facts of what's needed. And then in a 5-year window, you have smaller brands coming in like Elder Apparel and Alpine Parrot. You've got online plus size retailers like Alpine Curves, which is now Kinza Active, Plus Snow and Plus Outdoor. So now you're starting to actually see some people actually paying attention. And honestly, it was the smaller brands that really started kicking it off because they were far more nimble than the large brands.
Yeah.
In that window, also in that 2015, 2018 time, I think around 2017, actually Columbia, I know, dove very deep into plus sizes. I know because I led that charge. And as a large corporation, we were actually more nimble to do that, much like the smaller brands, because we were already making the product. It wasn't like we were starting from scratch. So it was really a matter of really paying attention, really tapping into the consumer base and really dialing things up rather than starting from the ground up. So both Columbia and Eddie Bauer really had a leg up for some of those larger brands because they were already in the game. They just had to pay more attention to it. Then Outdoor Research came out with an extended line and then plus sizes. LL Bean ramped up their lines. REI came out with TrailMade, Cotopaxi, North Face, Thicket. So brands have been trickling in and trickling in and trickling in. But it was really right around 2015 when that study came out that everybody went, wait, how many people are we missing out on? How many people are we marginalizing?
So
how much money are we not making? Which we'll get to also. Yes.
It's actually somewhat encouraging, and I think this is the kind of the larger history of the industry to think that if there's even some shred of evidence that it was happening in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it was starting to dabble at least. It's like that's pretty early on in the sort of modern outdoor industry, right? So it's kind of like, okay, well, that's interesting. And also I'm not excusing, but I also understanding like especially the poor history of the industry of, like, to your point, we just cater to the skinny white guy in the mountain. If people are just making profits doing that, maybe they're not looking at other people who are marginalized to make their money, whether that's intentional or just, ignorance, whichever way, it's not great, but you can understand it even if you don't condone it, right?
Right.
Why though, if it's if that number, like the 60%, do we have any idea why just the kind of fashion industry in general there's been two options until the mid 2010s? You'd think with a number that large of like the 60%, that's a big part of the population we're talking about, right? Like, why do you think that there wasn't more options kind of leading into this more recent era?
I would have to say, I mean, it really comes with lack of information. Nobody was talking about it back then.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we have seen, and I'm gonna lean on the female side of the equation here.
Sure.
One of the things that we have seen, and not to get too deep into politics, but with politics the way they've been and with leadership the way they've been, one of the benefits of what has come out of our political landscape is women are pissed off and speaking up.
Yeah.
People are finally starting to not feel shitty about who they are and not judge themselves about who they are and accept who they are and actually, honestly, demand equality. Back then, back in the 1920s, women were not outspoken.
Right.
Absolutely not.
And,
Here we
and there
are.
was a very big culture in general of like, well, we just don't talk about those things.
Oh,
Like that's sort
certainly
of like that
not.
was the overriding philosophy for a lot of stuff, right? Until
Right.
very recently. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I fully believe it was lack of information and the way the landscape has changed. There is more of a platform now for some people like me, to feel more comfortable about speaking up and calling out
Yeah.
the inequities and doing something about it. So I do blame it on a lack of information. I do also believe that there has been a stigma, and there still remains to be a stigma around size. There are several brands that don't want their product seen on people like that. I mean, there's a huge fat phobia piece of it as well. I worked for a company in the early 2000s, and their statement was, if you have a body, you are an athlete. Yet we didn't make any product that fit me. So there's been evolution, but I think it's a little bit of both. Fat phobia was and still remains a huge issue, and then just women and people of size starting to feel more comfortable and starting to actually step up and demand what's rightfully theirs as well.
Well, and that's why, influencers in the last, a couple of decades coming out, the Marley Blonskis of the world, the Myrna
Yeah.
Valerios of the world, like just people
Yes.
who are unafraid to sort of just put themselves out there and embody what
Absolutely.
you just described of like, I have a body, I'm an athlete. Then, that's why those people are important, right? And those where
Absolutely.
it can inspire change and lead change. So when you look at who's doing plus size as well today, would you say? Is there anyone out there who's like really leading the charge?
Well, I will say my favorite go-to, I will say outside of the outdoor industry specific,
Hmm.
I've always looked to Athleta, however we pronounce it. They've done a really good job in my experience. I know that not everybody has had the same experiences. One thing that I love on their website is it's not straight sizes and plus sizes. It's not extra large, extra small through extra large, and then plus sizes. Their website actually is extra small through extra large, and then 1X to 3X. It's just the numbers. It's really just the numbers. So I love that about it. But I also love that they are actually leaning in with their representation too. They're not just making the product. I walk into an Athleta store and there's a cluster of mannequins that are all different shapes and sizes. And
Yeah.
I think the gals in the Portland store think I'm a nut job because every time I walk in, I hug the mannequins because I'm happy to see them. But it tells me that I'm supposed to be there, right? Like, and it's interesting. I've talked a lot about being welcome, welcoming us. We don't really want to be welcome. To me, welcome feels like a plus one. Like, we didn't build it for you, but you could come.
Yeah.
Belonging is the word that I'm kind of sticking around. And when I walk into that store, I feel like I belong. I can shop with my girlfriend who's a size 12, and she and I can shop on the same rack. Oh, look, they have one for you. Oh my gosh, we could twin. I mean, I'm not going to, but like that experience of being able to shop with your friend and not being stuck in a corner somewhere by yourself is huge. So,
Yeah.
so I really applaud them for not only making the product, advertising the product, connecting with the consumer, and making it accessible. I think they do a fantastic job. They don't make everything in plus sizes, which is fine, but what's great is they specify that. I walk in and I look at a rack of sports bras and it says extra small to extra large. I don't have to waste my time going through that rack. This one goes
Right.
up to my size. Fantastic. They have to make it clear. So I think Athleta has done a really, really good job. I think in the outdoor space, I think the two that I think have done a really good job are Outdoor Research, and obviously I'm going to say Columbia. Columbia's been around a really, really long time. And we worked really hard to blow out the line and give people more options. I think Outdoor Research did a really great job too. I know some of the athletes that they worked with who are plus sized, and they worked really, really hard to keep them engaged. The representation on their page looks amazing. It's easy to find their product.
Hmm.
One thing that's interesting about those two, and there's work to be done in both. I think Columbia really still needs to work on their size range at some point because it stops at a 3X for women's but goes up to a 6X for men's. So there's room for improvement. The interesting thing though is that even though both brands used a size 1X model to build out their product, they fit differently
Mm.
because those models are built differently, which means one brand might fit you and one brand might not, which
Mm.
sounds terrible, but actually in my opinion, that's a good thing, because if we standardize the fit and we picked one model to rule them all, there's a ton of people that aren't going to find what they need. So
Right.
I'm glad that I can't wear outdoor research, because it means that people who aren't built like me can fit in their product. They have an option. So that's where the diversity actually lies.
So as far as like the larger sort of initiative goes, right? I mean, one of my experiences, working as a sales manager and everything, is that and a sneaky sort of unspoken thing that dictates a lot of decisions made by people who buy things, whether it's a buyer in a retail store or someone who's designing fabric and to acquire that the fabric or whatever it is that apathy tends to sort of play a huge role in the buying decisions. When I was I was selling Pro Bars, and you go in and sell it to the nutrition guy, and if they just didn't have time for you, no matter how good of a sales program you could put in front of them, if they're just like, I just don't care, man. It's like, all right, I guess we're not going to sell you now. So, I mean, do you run into that? I have to think there's got to be some resistance of like, oh, look, we have our sizes. We don't really need it. We don't really need to expand it. And the one thing you told me when we first spoke a few weeks ago was about how there's money to be made here. This isn't just you should do this because it's the right thing to do. Like, this is actually there's a lot of upside. And so you wonder about how do you kind of get the people who are probably throwing up roadblocks, but also make them see the fact that hey, you're leaving money on the table if you don't sort of explore this as an option.
Well, you hope that they'll do it out of the kindness of their heart and to do the right thing, but then you show them the money. I mean, honestly,
that's the path on a lot of things, isn't it?
if 70% of the population is plus sized, the majority of the brands are building product for 30% of the population. So in this last year, where the outdoor industry dug its heels in and put on the e-brake and laid people off and tightened their belts, money was tight. Why don't you sell to the masses of people with fists full of dollars who have been waiting for you to come along and sell to them?
Yeah, and if you want to do something about equity and to improve, to expand who's able to buy your products and go outside and welcome different people into our community.
Yeah.
How about there's 70% of people who can't currently do it.
Right. And I will tell you, the plus size community, if you get it right and you earn their trust and you're not doing it just for the buck, if you have a little bit of heart behind it, they're the most loyal customers you will find, because they have been waiting for fucking ever.
100 years, we established that.
To participate. For fucking ever. So, and I will tell you, these communities that I'm in, Facebook groups and online chats and we all talk. And we have shitty experiences in stores. We tell everybody. When we have amazing experiences, oh, I'm looking for a new bib. Oh my God, I just tried the new blah, blah, blah bib from True Gear. And we all talk. It's infectious.
Right.
So it is money on the table. And I'm telling you, we've been waiting for years and years and years and years to find gear that fits us, so we can do all the things with our friends that they've been doing all along.
So Make Plus equal. So what is your day to day? Are you advising brands? Are you trying to change? Get people to have these realizations that we're talking about. What is the work that you're doing on a day to day basis?
It is 99% education, and that is either in educating. Well, it's a couple different things. So the education happens on both sides. It's educating brands. Did you know that 67 to 72% of it's all the things that we've talked about? It's helping them understand. It's connecting them with athletes. It's helping them understand the why. It's helping them with their pricing, because it's not cheap to make plus sizes. I'm not going to lie, but there's a way to do it. So It's educating them on how this can be done in a way that is still profitable. The other half of it comes in public speaking. Here we are in a podcast. I'm speaking at FatCon at the end of this month, and that's a completely different audience to me. That's the plus size community. I don't need to tell them those stories. Those are their stories. They already know that. But what I can do is I can educate them on the behind the scenes of, why does it take so long? Did you know that the product process takes 18 months? That's why you can't have it now. Here are all the reasons why the companies say no. Doesn't mean it's the right answer, but here's the why behind it. Because I think when we all know more, we do better, right? We all benefit from information. So I'm either educating brands on how to serve a community that, frankly, a lot of them are afraid of. They don't want to fuck it up. It's real delicate. And what terms do we use? Do we call them fat? How do we even talk to them? How do we earn their trust? So I spend my time doing that. But then I also spend my time in public speaking, educating the plus size community on what the facts really are behind it. Not so much as a defense of the corporate world, but let me give you some more information so at least you have an understanding.
Again, everything on paper, to my point earlier, apathy is going to play a role here. Getting people on board, education, to your point, is key to all of this. And it is nice that there is a kind of simple explanation to say to folks of you can make more money if you pursue this correctly.
Yeah.
The brands, I would see almost as and sort of the market, the players in a marketplace, the brands almost feel like the easier win. It's look, you can make more money. You can do the right thing. You can increase participation in outdoor sports just by providing the goods in order to let more people do them.
And you already have the infrastructure to do it. You already have the factories and the patterns and
If you don't want to do unisex sizes, well, guess what? All we're saying is just make it bigger. Whatever. There's more you could do. Cost goes up a little bit. Here's how you navigate those waters, all those things. The retail side, though, is that a little bit more challenged, right? Because now these are especially small independent shops have sort of built their business based off of the current availability of sizes. So if there's going to be more, how do we problem solve for that? How do we kind of get ahead of that? And how do we establish that as a viable place for this stuff to be sold?
And that is a big shift too. Managing the retail space is really, really tricky because there's only so much floor space. It's really, really tricky. And, I had a lot of push and pull in my previous role at Columbia with the retail team about, you can't sell it if it's not on the floor. Well, we have these 3 main styles. Yeah, the dude that buys that style has bought it in all the 3 colors. And if those are the only things you put on the floor, he will never buy anything else from you. So I think it's really, really interesting. I think there is this fear and disbelief that if you build it, they will come. Why would we risk taking some of these sizes off the floor and putting more plus sizes in? Because the numbers are there. And if you're too afraid to try, you'll never see that happen, right? Take a look at the size curves. There's more people. I remember we touched on Old Navy when they first came out with their body. What did they call it? I don't remember what to call it. I should remember what they call their campaign. But when they went full size inclusive in stores all the way to 6X, I remember going in before Black Friday and the store was packed. You couldn't get through some of the fixtures. It was a lot, but I found my sizes. It was great. It was super cool. I went back the day after Black Friday and I could not find anything over a size large. All of the larger product had sold out
gone.
And everything that was left was smalls and mediums and larges. So
interesting.
Tell me what's going to sell.
Yeah, I got to think, I've talked to some retailers this past fall who really expanded their, secondhand options. And, you kind of think they sell secondhand stuff in their store. That's great. Good for you. And you just kind of in your head that people it's a consignment shop. People bring things in. And it's this nice little section of the store. Some dirty gear and whatever. No, actually, there's folks who have it's a meaningful part of the trailhead in Missoula, Montana. It's 20% of their business now. And there's
awesome.
It's a whole system about what they do with it, where it goes if it doesn't sell. And it's a meaningful part of that retailer's business. It took dedicating space and dedicating to the initiative itself. And again, this is where another opportunity for the outdoor industry to lead. This is another form of innovation. It's look, we have a consumer base in need. We have brands who are providing those things. How do we get it in the hands of the people who need it and can also make positive change for the outdoor adventure space? And also, guess what? You'll make money doing it.
Money.
So,
yes. And it's interesting that you refer to it as innovation. Chris Pugh from True was on a podcast with Justine Moulier, French name, Just a Wild Thought. And True was actually one of my first clients. I love them. They're amazing. And they make killer product. It is the most technical outdoor gear that I have ever worn. Which we deserve. It's fantastic. And in that podcast interview with Justine, he used that as innovation because where do you go? You already have the technical fabrics. You already have the seam sealing. You already have the technical construction. What else is next from innovation? Yeah, you can keep dreaming up fabrics, but three layers. You're
not going to
add some stretch, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So to him, innovation is getting the product to more people. Size inclusion.
It's problem solving. Innovation is problem solving, right?
Exactly.
Before the problem
and it doesn't necessarily have to be about the product you're building. There's innovation in processes. There's all of that.
Yeah, the problems we were solving in the 80s and 90s were like, hey, can this keep me warm when it's wet? Is it lighter?
Right.
Is it what blah blah blah? Well, we've
Yeah,
solved all of those
we
problems,
got
and if
it.
you're an outdoor brand that is still trying to solve those problems a little bit better, you're kind of getting left behind
Okay.
because we moved on
Yeah.
to how do we make it more sustainable? How do we actually have a circular economy? How do
Right.
we create different categories so that we're serving more people and making
Exactly.
more money and blah blah blah? It's like, well, these are the problems to solve. So
Hmm.
yeah, it is an innovation story, which is always an outdoor story as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I guess last thing, like if there is a brand that's listening and and they're plus size curious, where would you
That
where
was
would you
funny.
what would you where would you lead them? Like what is the right path into on the products? I mean, obviously it's a lot to say, hey, take your entire range and increase your output in terms of sizes, but like
Yeah.
what's the most needed product category, would you say? Obviously all of it, but like if you were going to start somewhere, where would you start?
I would still, that's a tricky one because I can say, well, base layer because it goes with everything and you can use it year round.
Sure.
Outerwear because you can use it. I would still say outerwear. I think there are a couple small brands that have touched on hiking pants, which is great, but that's all they make. And
Yeah.
that's fine. I think you have to start small. I still think there's a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of space in any category, frankly. I know North Face started their plus size line, I want to say 2 seasons ago, and it was just ski and snowboard, and that is it. That's it. And I
Hmm.
think they have a hiking pant that they've had for a really long time. But I think it sort of depends on your brand's direction. I think for the North Face, snow makes sense for them. If it was Burton, snow would make sense for them, right? It depends on what your brand is. But if you're taking a look at a company that spans all of it, it's interesting. Because my gut says start with your best sellers, but the problem with best sellers is that's not how people shop. And that's when I came into play at Columbia, that's what they were selling on plus sizes was best sellers, and I was like, but I want to buy an outfit. Why can't I
Yeah.
buy an outfit? Build me a collection. So
Collection.
yeah, I mean that bestsellers are easy because you can sort of test the waters, but it is also sort of a false positive because they're your bestsellers, so it's going to do
Right.
well anyway.
Yeah.
I think collection based is the way to go.
It's a better marketing
And
story too.
oh, for sure, yes, and
Yeah.
I mean, and that was part of the reason we did that with Columbia too. Is we would tie into the marketing dollars for the blah 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 collection that also included plus, so we could actually represent people in plus size bodies under that budget. It was great. You can sort of roll it all into one and get bang for your buck with that.
The outdoors is not a niche. It's way bigger than that. The outdoors is essential to our lives, essential to who we are as a species. And as the world continues to get smaller, as new advances in technology push us to the limits of the planet, the outdoors is more important than ever. Open Container is here to explore this new idea of the outdoors. We'll strive to uncover stories about creativity, adventure, conservation, politics, and the people who make the outdoor space so vibrant. The world is full of anxiety right now. Climate change, politics, cultural upheaval. But fear not, there are answers in the outdoors. I'm Doug Schnetzpahn, and on this show, we will talk to people who are looking to nature to find the solutions we all need. We will be having honest conversations about how the outdoors can change us, how it heals us, how we learn from it, and how we can build a better world from what we learn about being outdoors. So please join us, open the container, and find out what's inside. Let's get some.
Open Container launches January 21st. Find and follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, you mentioned, great, 70% of the available market share are plus size, right? But I mean, I don't know if that's subjective. I don't understand where maybe they're pulling that data from. Is there any sort of is there another figure? Is there a monetary amount that kind of can encapsulate the market upside of the plus size market?
Well, of course there is, Colin. This is capitalism.
There's a number for everything.
there's a figure out on Statista that says that the 2023 global plus size apparel market was valued at $288 billion and is targeted to hit $500 billion by 2033. That's a big piece of pie. So, when Lululemon started making leggings and everybody thought, they sort of have that market cornered, and then everybody made leggings. That's a big piece of pie. A couple, even if you do a tiny little collection, there is money for you. There is money for everybody to profit here.
Well, I think we can wrap it up there. Any sort of final thoughts, something we didn't get to, something you want to make sure that our listeners get a chance to hear you say?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about the financial side of this and why there's a benefit to it. We have touched on a little bit of it's also the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, we all deserve access to the outdoors. Mother Nature doesn't care what size we are, so why should brands? But the other thing that I want to say is, for the brands who are already working on this, fantastic. You are changing lives for people. You are getting people outside. They get to participate. And for the brands who aren't quite ready yet or aren't really sure that it's necessary, you're actually holding people back. If we don't have gear that keeps us safe and dry, we can't participate unless you want us to do it naked, which, we have the naked bike ride in Portland. You want me naked skiing? I suppose we could do that.
Summer.
yeah. Palmer Glacier is a little rough if you eat it. But yeah, I mean, by not participating, it's a barrier to entry, which is the opposite of what the outdoor industry is trying to accomplish, right?
Andrea, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to have you on. We could wrap things up there. Definitely come back on again as we get some more wins, hopefully soon, as things get announced. We want to hear more about them as this progresses.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, that's the show for today. Send your feedback on this and every episode of The Rock Fight to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rockfight LLC. Thanks to my guests, Andrea Kelly. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And he's here to take us out. It's Krista Makes with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.